he hates it when I say Neil rhymes with Theo. And so the context of why we're here this morning is how many of you have every volunteer that you need to work in your ministry? Raise your hand up high. You just got them all, don't you? And so really it is about being intentional about getting more people engaged, people who are in our body, but also you can use some of the stuff we're talking about being invitational, and the things that Neil and I have been really fortunate because we have been inviting people, and we have had people actually come, and that's really exciting, when all this works, is what I'm trying to say. And so that's kind of why we're here, is to help you to match and mobilize the people that you would want to bring to your ministry, the people that you want to serve. And it's really the word that I would say more than anything else is we can be efficient or we can be effective. It's hard to be both. And you never want to be efficient at the cost of being effective. Obviously, when Jesus called the 12, he did not text them or even email them. It was a personal invitation. And so in our world of technology, unfortunately, we've come too hard to rely on the attraction marketing, rebuild it and they will come, and that's not happening. It's not happening in any church, but it is, the churches that are growing, it's by invitation, it is by word of mouth. It is. Same thing with those churches where people are engaged. It is more and more by word of mouth. Now, I'm not a Luddite. I absolutely love the website, and I'm a Facebook crazy person, but only to forge the relationships that I can make that personal invitation. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I think, some of you, how many people do you have to invite to help you in IT? Not many. But there are lots of us in this room who absolutely depend on the hands and feet of Christ and other people. And we definitely want them because that helps them to grow in a relationship. So, are you being efficient or are you being effective? Now, there are some tools that really help us be efficient. I know that lots of you are getting volunteers by going into the search and saying, okay, what are their gifts? Right? And then send an email out to everybody with that gift and invite them to X, Y, or Z. Now, I don't want to make fun of anybody, but I've gotten some of those emails, right? I know, I bet they're doing that because I've got the gift of giving, or I'm passionate about this. And that's good, and that's casting a wide net. And there's nothing wrong with casting a wide net, but if you want to catch the fish, at some point you got to bring them into the boat. And usually, even with a wide net, they don't volunteer to jump in the boat, do they? You get the analogy, right? Okay, so that's really what we're going to talk about, is just about matching. And I'm really excited because what we're going to teach today is something that doesn't, I'm an extrovert, right? Neil is an introvert. And it's what we're going to teach you today. You don't have to have a personality. Like, I know it's easy for me to go up to people and invite them. I know that's just simple for me to do. And I know it's not for you. But what we're going to teach you is not about personality or not about you have to be a certain way. It's something that you can take as a tool and a template to make it your own. And I'm hoping that it really works and resonates with you. That being said, now for something completely different.
When our kids were little, they'd go out with Dan and they'd say, please use your non-conversational voice. I don't quite know what that is. It really meant that they wanted her to talk less. Just to prove that I pay attention on Sunday morning, this sermon last Sunday was a great preamble to this because it's really about stories and questions. So with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit about language and questions in a minute, but there is a story behind this. When I first graduated from college, my degrees, I was an education major, and my degree was in speech and political science. Now, there's a story behind that I won't tell today, but I went to get a job as a teacher, and they showed up for the first day of work, and they said, we needed an English teacher, so one of your assignments is to teach English. Now, my whole English experience after high school was one course my fall semester as a freshman, so I was totally unprepared for this. Luckily, their curriculum was very well established, so as a teacher I had to stay about a week ahead of them through most of this. But one thing we had to do was diagram sentences. Did any of you have to do that after school?
Love it. It's my favorite.
You really learn about grammar and language when you have to dig down into those little pieces like that. So I think it was junior high for me. Anyway, I had to teach, dissect these sentences like that. And it got me to thinking, really focusing on the small parts of what we do when we have conversations. So that's really where it goes to this. Now, when we talk to people, there are 4 types of statements that we make to people. Okay? First one is an announcement. Now, I think what Clay does Sunday morning in the little videos is a great example of an announcement. Right? It just say, Dave Ramsey is coming next Sunday, and then have a drink of orange juice. Right? That's an announcement. It's a statement of fact. Future fact, but it's a statement of fact. Second type of statement is an exclamation. That's where there's some excitement to it. You know, it's like, Dave Ramsey's coming next Sunday. Wow! Right? And there's an excitement to it. That's the exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. The third one is a commandment, which is, we tend to do this a lot. It's like, well, Dave Ramsey's coming next Sunday. It's a great program. You should come. Right? That's a commandment. Okay? And the fourth type is really a question where we ask people to participate. Dave Ramsey's coming next Sunday. I'd like to invite you to come with me. What do you think? Are you free to come next Sunday? Love to have you there, right? There's a question buried in the middle of all of that sort of thing. Now, we tend to, when we talk to people, we tend to do more of the statements than we do the questions, right? So even when we talk to people, it's like, you know, there's a great program Sunday. It's on the difference between being a follower and a fan. It's a great dissection of the difference between Jesus and Paul. Oh, and we got a new sign out front, and the pastor is just really fired up. Here's a card. There's not an invitation in any of that, was there? There's not a question. It's an announcement. It's an explanation. You can sometimes put a command, you should come, at the end of it. But there's not really an invitation. Okay? An invitation really involves, I need to stand over here. Okay. An invitation really involves a question. We ask people to participate. Okay? And that's, from our background in sales, that's really a key part of that, because you can talk to people a lot about what's out there for them, but it's only when you ask them to get them to take a baby step and think and participate, to be creative and wonder and figure out how this all fits together, that they open up the file cabinets of their mind and build an answer. And when they do that, they start to participate, and then things can move forward. So statements don't get people to move forward as effectively as questions do. They're very efficient, right? But questions tend to be much more effective as far as getting people to move forward. So at this point, we gave you a handout. Let me just ask you to write down a couple things down here underneath that section on question there. And we're going to give you a minute here. What I want you to write down is 2 reasons why we make more statements and ask less questions. Why do we make statements versus asking questions?
I got extra back here.
What'd you come up with?
Less potential for rejection.
Yeah.
That was one of mine.
How many said rejection? Less potential for rejection.
I just put less intimidating.
Less intimidating. Something
He says-
about, I don't want to be pushy, right?
Don't want to offend, and I don't want to hear no, right? You put those 2 things together, that's really where a lot of it comes from.
And it's easier and simpler. It's easier to just make a statement. Just, here's what it is.
A lot of times I don't really want another answer.
Right. Put yourself out there.
Keeps me in control. I don't want to make them feel guilty.
You don't wanna engage.
Don't want to impose
Relationship.
sometimes.
Don't want to impose. That's good, because you know, there's some of the people that are coming to this church, the young ones, they're just getting overworked to death. So be careful. I'm just gonna say, when I was new coming into a church, it was like, my pastor finally sat me down and said, listen, you are a Christian go-go girl. You go here, you go there. You need to pick a ministry and work and not try to do everything. And I'm seeing some of our newer members, that particularly the young ones, they're not coming to church because they're so busy working. So be careful. I would say, be mindful. Be mindful of that. If they're in 2 or 3 or 4 things, you know, I had one woman not want to join a life group. She said, I don't see my husband now as it is. He's working so hard for the church. That's,
Did you tell her if he went with her, they'd see each other that
I
whole
did
hour?
say that. I did say that to her. I did say that to her. So what a lot happens is, and I think it's important for us to talk about the fear that many of you expressed. You know, and where does that fear come from? It really comes from making it about us instead of making it about what we have to offer. And so if you want to draw three little circles, one is fear. When we have feelings, okay, we've got these feelings of fear, and that impacts in the second circle what we think, and then what we do or don't do. Does that make sense? If you've got fear, I'm fearful, I don't want it, you know, even if it's way down, you've never articulated it, if you've got fear about sharing a ministry opportunity, or if you've got fear about inviting somebody to church, whatever it is, if you've got that fear, that drives your thinking, which drives your actions, right? So the way to break that is to do what Jesus did all the time and said, think first, don't feel first. Think first, think on these things. Think on what you have to offer. Change your thinking, that will change what you do, and that will give you different feelings. Which is really, I mean, we do like an hour class on that, but you know, that's the thumbnail piece, that if you just got, I need to change my thinking. If I change my thinking, that will change what I do, and therefore will change how I feel. So, for example, I don't know if they're gonna say yes or not. It's not your job to make people volunteer. Doesn't that make you feel good right now? Okay, that's good. It's not your job. It is your job to invite enough people to find the ones that are the right fit. That's very different, isn't it? That's a different way of thinking about it. So I don't know if you're gonna say yes or no. You know, I don't know if you're gonna, doesn't make any difference. My job's just to invite you. I don't know if you're gonna come to church with me or not. My job's just to continue to invite enough people with a question, not an announcement. So when Neil teaches this in sales, he uses the example of the church. You know, he talks about the announcement. Oh, you know, our pastor's great, and we're having this great series and everything, and then he goes, that's not inviting. You know, that's the invitation comes with the question, will you come with me? Will you come and see what's going on? So here's what I get to anoint you all today with: becoming professional inviters. You just get to invite people that are around your circle, outside your circle, that match the ministry, and we're going to talk about that, you know, the matching those spiritual gifts. But there's two kinds of asks. There's a big ask and a little ask, and you just all get to be askers. Make an ask out of yourself.
We're usually pretty good about making big askers out of our.
Big askers. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a big ask where you're really praying and somebody, you know, that you want to take over a ministry. That's a pretty big ask. And then there's a little ask. Like somebody didn't come and show up to be a greeter and an usher on Sunday morning. That's a little ask. You do not have to say, oh, let me check and see what their spiritual gifts are. Don't know if I want to put, no. I mean, and that way if you look around and ask people, I mean, even the introvert would do that if he were asked. Can you just fill in this morning because somebody didn't come? You know, so if you've got a greeter and they're not showing up, you can just ask anybody. You don't have to say, oh, let's get Denise's husband because he's always here and he's just always says yes, you know. And so what happens is we see as members of the congregation, a lot of times the same people are being used over and over instead of just, don't worry about, for the little ask, to ask somebody that maybe is not involved. Can you just do this for a second? Because A, it's a chance for them to serve. B, they might like it. C, just because my spiritual gift is not hospitality doesn't mean that I couldn't do a good job greeting, right? So you don't have to match everything for those little asks. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, now we get to the fun part. I'm going to teach you OCI. And this is a way to invite people, a way to ask people into ministry, and I know it works because you've got a volunteer army, right? That's what you're dealing with, basically. Everybody who walks in this door is a volunteer. Some of them don't even know they're in the army yet, but they are a part of the volunteer army. So the O stands for observe. Now, how can you observe people? You watch them. You're good at that. You listen to them. You're really good at that. You think about them. Almost like you see a movie in your head of what they've been like, right? You're observing. There's some other ways that you can observe. You can observe their spiritual strengths. If they've taken the spiritual gift inventory, that's a way to observe. But really, the way you observe is you use your senses. You don't really smell them. You don't taste them. But, you think about them, you watch them, you listen to them, you see them interact, you observe people. And then the C part is to compliment them. To compliment them. Now, this is not to trick them or manipulate them, but it is to make people to resonate and increase the relationship. That's what it is for. So it's not to say, okay, I'm going to say, okay, here's Denise. Denise, I've been watching you, and you are really great with people, and now I'm going to trick you into inviting. No, it's not for that, but it is to resonate with her. Because when you tell somebody something, like, for example, Jeanette, you're probably one of the most compassionate people I know. That resonates with you because you know you are compassionate. You might not always admit it, but deep down you really do care a lot about people. And so I nailed it with Jeanette, right? So that speaks her language. I say, Dana, you're probably one of the most touchy-feely people. That is not, that is not going to resonate with him, is it? Right?
I don't get it.
I get it. So inviting him to be a part of a touchy-feely thing is like, right. So it's really important. Never. Right. So it's important for us to observe and to make that compliment specifically speak to the person. Does that make sense? And then the I is invite. The I is to ask a question. I'd love to invite you to participate in X or Y, big ask or little ask. I'm going to tell you a story. Mr. Introvert over here, I don't know how many years we went to this church before you did anything. You had a call. It's probably 7 years, 8 years.
Something like that,
Yeah. The pastor before you, we meet with him at a coaching thing. He still doesn't know us. And we were here 6 years. But I will say that and I'm not doing this to suck up, but you called Neil and said, I want you to pray about something. Looked at his gifts and said, I really want you to pray about this because this is the gifts you had, and I'd like to invite you to do X, Y, and Z. And Neil said, well, I'll pray about it. And then he did. I'm going to tell your story. And then, is that okay? So we do this to each other. No, okay. Moving on. But you want to know, don't you? Right? So he goes and they said, well, you got to be a member first. And so Joe Schaefer sat down and said, okay, so that's great. You got it all set up. And he goes, where were you baptized? And he goes, I wasn't. Talk about a growing in your relationship just because you invited somebody, right? Because I know he doesn't do anything without thinking about it, because he is Mr. Logical, and he made that step of faith to be baptized as an adult. But, it started because of one invitation. And so you just don't know how we help people grow in all those things. Okay, so this is OCI, all right? So now you get to practice. We got...
Let me just give you a little different.
Oh, yeah,
thumbnail
he's
on
always
this.
got to do this.
Essentially what your whole goal of this is to figure out, how do I speak this other person's language, right? Because it's like, you're really a good bureaucrat, I'd love to have you. It doesn't go over well. Right? So that's the reason you're observing, so you can figure out how to speak their language to give them a compliment that's going to really be meaningful to them, right? Which usually doesn't have anything to do with how they dress or smell. But we oftentimes do that. It's like, oh, is that a new perfume? Right? And that's not a compliment, really. It's like, what about them led them to make that? Right? When you find that part, then you've got that good compliment.
Who you are, not what you
Who
do.
you are, not what you are.
Okay?
So you're observing to be able to speak their language, give them a genuine compliment. Now, then you're going to invite them. And as Dana said, when you invite them, that's really, you've met your whole purpose in that, because you've spoken their language and giving them an opportunity. Right? Your job is not to get them to say yes. Okay? If anything, when you've invited them, I'd really encourage you to see that as giving them a gift at that point in time, because you called out something in them that you think is very important. And if you've nailed it, they'll see it as a gift.
Even if they don't say yes. So you're building people for the kingdom, even if they don't say yes.
Yep.
You invited me personally to something and I didn't go, and I sure hope you didn't take that personally. We often talk about a flight attendant who has to do beverages, and she takes her cart down the aisle, and she said, would you like beverage? Would you like beverage? If somebody says, no thank you, she says, oh no! It's just so sad, there must be something wrong with my Diet Coke. No, she, you know, it's just her job to offer it, and really, if you see yourself in that place, it takes a lot of the fear out, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, it's just a shift, it's just a shift. So,
Okay, so now they can practice.
now they can practice. What we're gonna do is we've written the, let me give you an example. What's your number one, spiritual gift, Daniel?
Teaching.
Teaching, okay. So what are some other ways to compliment Daniel about his teaching, rather than say, you know, I noticed that you have the spiritual gift of teaching, Daniel, so I really, that's kind of, what's the word I want to use? Awkward, isn't it? Right? And so I want to approach him to be a part of the ministry and teach something. Maybe it's outside the church, maybe it's inside, but I want, what are some other words? You guys join with me, and then we're going to do all of these together. But what are some other words that you could mention to him about teaching?
Daniel, I've noticed that you are really good at taking complex topics and explaining them in a way that anyone can understand them.
And so I'd like to invite you to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, so making the complicated simple. What else? What are the other ways to talk about what a teacher does? Jeanette?
Well, I know I went to compliment Daniel that Sunday after worship. I thought that was an excellent sermon, and he's truly blessed with the gift for teaching. And having experienced that, I can honestly say that.
Okay.
I think I would say something along the lines of, I've noticed you really enjoy, and you seem to really, you know, in my language, get a kick out of seeing other people, you know, grasp a
Get it.
concept or learn something and that kind of thing.
Excellent, excellent. So now we're telling this person what we see in them. Does that make sense? Okay, let's do one more together. Laura, I know you have the gift of hospitality. I bet that's high in your spiritual gifts. Yes? Or mercy?
Serving, giving, and
Serving and giving. Okay, so serving. Help me out. What are another way that would describe the gift of serving?
Laura, you have such a heart for other people that you'd like to do things for them. I'd like to ask you to be on our hospitality team.
And that's kind of how you got asked, wasn't it? Yeah.
Something.
What other way besides, okay, you've got a gift for serving, it's serving. What other ways could you use to describe it? This is where, you know, we have to start thinking about this, don't we? You know, I've noticed you are always the one to step in and help. When something needs to be passed out or something like that, I'll go get the pencils, that's what I've observed that about you, and I love that about you, and really what I'd like to do is ask you to help me today, or help me da-da-da.
Laura, I love the way you step in and just take charge of whatever it is you feel needs to get done and make it happen. And I think that servant's heart makes a huge difference in the life of the church.
Okay, you get the idea, right? Okay, so now we're going to pick up in small groups just for a little bit. And the first four, administration, discernment, and evangelism, let's have that group up there. Come up with some ways to describe those. 1, 2, 3, 4, that group up there. And then, let's see, exhortation, faith, and giving. How about you four on the back row? Exhortation, faith, and giving. You can Google exhortation if you want, I had to. Okay. Healing, helps, and knowledge. Healings, helps, and knowledge. Let's have you five do healing, helps, and knowledge.
Oh, okay.
And let's do proclamation, shepherding, or let's do the last two. Shepherding, teaching, and wisdom. Shepherding, teaching, and wisdom. This is kind of this little group over here. It'll be a bigger group. But just get together, come up with some ways to do that. Oh, you guys get to do
leadership.
mercy, proclamation, and service. I knew I had you.
Well,
Yes, he is. Well, that's about
I mean, I think there are three areas. Proclamation,
So compliments for healing.
what would you notice if we wanted to invite this into grief leader or
Well, healing, I would think, would be things like, not reduce. They don't run from things.
I mean,
And there's an awareness.
like our healing rituals.
No.
Exactly.
it's just like, you know, you feel better?
Conversation.
No, healing is more fantastic gift
And so much
healthy talk and not have like a conversation. To move towards teaching.
Yeah.
So,
Pick up on
it's not actually laying on hands and hands.
So you have a very unique relationship, and you're able to be with somebody in really tough times, and I appreciate how you can with somebody. I think that would be really
So heart healing.
Absolutely.
You can both have it.
Project and.
That's a good example. Dude, don't shy away you know, whether it's leadership, hard decisions, hard conversations, hard person, you know, mercy, transcends, maybe it's like a you know, oh, she always has a drama, or oh,
So obviously, like, we used to, that's why we used to call it in the
just say,
Would be like a coach, but whereas it's while we all acknowledge coach.
so I'd give you all that. Thank you.
And that you're willing to
So I could have done it.
Dave's is not that high. Dave's is a little lower.
Is that a compliment? Does that count?
Yeah, it's all
I could call it somebody like a lifelong learner. Lifelong learner. There are so many subjects that you take
you don't know, you go and
What
find
about their
out.
combination?
And that's
This is for the listeners.
people that I know about that was
They're not
honestly,
great
listen,
parts.
because they
So maybe
never
they're
know,
better.
and something that's like,
Well, true knowledge is knowing that you.
Well, and that
or is that what
and that doesn't, I mean, and that doesn't necessarily has to do with biblical knowledge and
right,
spiritual knowledge, being able to share it, not just because you know
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
right, like wisdom, right.
I just think of the opposite of what was up. When, you know, they
Oh,
don't.
right.
That's what mine.
No, it's just that's a different.
And like I think it's Sandy license to,
It wasn't.
as a deferred part. And there's no, I mean, she's looking for people to get leadership, not going.
I find it interesting that I know that at eighth grade,
It's a part of what we do in the combinations of them, and the society.
you know, some of those things, I feel like right now, I think I'm still, if I took it now, I would go
to go into uncharted waters.
and part of that
You
is
knock on that
years of
door.
down with some of
Get
them.
somebody's home, you don't know.
That was originally what it was, the service, and I would much rather like listen to them.
Okay. How many of you found this difficult to apply human attributes to these spiritual gifts? Anybody find that a little difficult? Yeah, I did when I was sitting trying to do it at home. It's something that becomes continuous, doesn't it? I mean, it's something we have to be intentional about it, rather than just shouting out here's your giftedness according to your study. Because I can manipulate that. I just took it again and shifted mine all around. So either that or I'm just multi-gifted, I don't know. But, so, no. Not it.
I said that out loud.
Yes, he did. Okay, so what we hopefully that you'll get is a couple of things, and I ask you what your takeaway is. But your challenge is, we really want you to go out and practice OCI, because like anything else, scales on a piano, chords on a guitar, if you don't practice it, you lose it, right? And so we're really going to challenge each one of you in the next week to come back and do an OCI, do at least OCIs practicing. Now, maybe it's with your kids. You know, I've been watching you. Maybe it's with your spouse. You know, whatever it is, but practice consciously, intentionally, the OCI. The more you practice it, the more it just automatically becomes. I will be quite honest. I used it all the time in life group. And I'm so happy that, you know, I have grandchildren now leading life groups. People who are in a life group, who are led by a life group, who are in a life group. I know this works, you know, because we can put the big, broad email out. Now, for those of you who are saying, well, what about millennials? Because they don't talk in person anymore, they text. You can OCI in text. Think about it. You can absolutely do this in a text. You can do this in an email. But I'm going to invite you with a question. Will you start being more personal in your invitations instead of broad? Because that's efficient, where you become more personal in your invitations. Just, that's what I'm going to ask you. Will you do that? Will you do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, because I'm not leaving until you say yes. Okay, and then the last thing is we just would love to hear from you. What do you have now that you didn't have 30 minutes ago? Just think back, what do you have now that you absolutely may or may not be able to use? Julie?
Sorry, the fire marshal's here, so I stepped out. But I like the way you said, don't lead with, oh, I've noticed your spiritual gift is, I like the observe and compliment suggestion. I think that's a lot easier and a lot more personal. We are all trying to develop relationships, because without relationships, it's not gonna work.
Thank you for sharing that.
The reminder that our job is to be invitational, our job isn't to make someone say yes. Because sometimes we do the ask, but then we go on and on and on instead of just ending it and letting them think about it, pray about it. And, you know, it's like, and you know, you don't want to leave until you close the deal, and that's not what
I think it's
it's about. Yeah.
I want to step back even further to the efficient versus effective, because I think we all get caught up in thinking, well, it's more efficient for me to just get this done, to do this thing. Whereas what we're trying to do is grow people in a relationship with Jesus, and therefore the more effective way is to get it done through other people. And I think for me, you just blessed me with that. That's a huge analogy for me. So thank you.
That's a great shift, and really, as we work with all sorts of people across professions, that shift makes a lot of difference in terms of how they communicate with people.
So can you imagine teaching the lay people that you work with to do this? You know, I mean, I just think about the emails that I got. Well, you want to do No Selfie Sunday, and it was very impersonal, and it wasn't written by you. And I'm no offense to the person, but it was just, yeah, I'll do it because I've done it before. But if I was getting that, I would just like, yeah, okay. You know, we're inundated. It's like interruption marketing, like a commercial versus an invitation. So if we can teach our people, our lay people in ministry, to do that, I think it's really, and it's. Do you agree that this is easy?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like rocket, and you don't have to have a certain personality to do it. So, well, thank you for letting us share. We really appreciate it. Share our hearts, and you know, we love church, and we just want to see it grow and be God's church. So,
I don't want to commit them without their approval, but my hunch is that if you wanted to have a personal conversation at some point, just say, hey, tell me a little more. I bet they'd be willing to do that.
Absolutely, sure, absolutely.